Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about rails. So here's the top of the board, here's the rail, and here's the bottom of the board, top, bottom. So the apex of the rail is the point that's furthest from the stringer. So if the apex is, let's say, 60% the way down from the top to the bottom, is 40% from bottom to apex, this would be a 60-40 rail. Okay, and that's pretty typical for most surfboards. A 50-50 rail would be where the apex is halfway between the top and the bottom. Rails are either hard or soft. Near the tail of the board, you typically have hard rails where the top comes down and meets the bottom at a sharp corner, almost 90 degrees. This is hard. This is typically at the tail of the board. Now, if you look closely, most rails near the tail are bent in a little bit, not exactly vertical here, bent a little bit like this. Away from the tail of the board, from in front of the fins all the way to the nose, the rails are typically tucked, which means that the bottom doesn't come to a sharp corner, it's tucked under the bottom of the board. This is more of a soft rail. Okay, so we're ready to put in the rails. We're going to do this by hand. So here's the edge of the board. It's a vertical drop from the deck to the bottom. So I'm going to put in a 60-40 rail. So I measure in the center of the board 60% the distance from the deck edge to the bottom edge, and I put a mark here. And then near the nose of the board, the rail is going to go 50-50, so I put a line halfway between the deck and the bottom. And about a foot from the nose of the board, the line is going to go to 60-40. It's going to stay 60-40. And then towards the tail of the board, I'm going to put a mark about 17 inches from the tail, and the 60-40 rail is going to intercept the bottom edge of the board at this 17-inch mark. Because remember, the tail edge of the rail is going to be hard. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this special tool. Some people call it a Fred tool, F-R-E-D. And it's a piece of wood with a Stanley Surfform mounted at an angle on one edge of the wood. This angle here from the face of the wood to the Surfform is, well, 90 degrees would be here, and then it's another 30 degrees. So it's 120 degrees angle from the face of the Surfform to the face of the board. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this Fred tool with the wood down on the bottom of the board, and I'm going to run it up and down the rail. I'm going to put in a 30-degree tucked angle, and I'm going to do this until the cut beveled area reaches the line that I put on the edge of the board. Yeah, I put some bags of lawn food on the blanks just to hold it tight against the stand, so that when I run the Fred tool up and down, the board doesn't move around. You can see this bevel goes from the bottom of the board and reaches the vertical edge of the board at the line. This line is going to be the apex of the rail. The apex is the point on the rail furthest from the stringer. Alright, so after I put in my first bevel, I'm going to take my Fred tool. Instead of holding it with the wood on the bottom of the board. I'm going to turn it so that the wood is pressed against the vertical edge of the board. And now the Surfform is going to break this corner at the bottom of the board and put in another 30-degree bevel to finish off the tucked under edge. And I'm going to do this in nice, smooth, long strokes. The idea is to get the beveled edge closest to the stringer to form a nice, smooth line that traces along the perimeter of the board. Remember to stop 17 inches from the tail because you want that hard edge at the tail of the board. So if you look closely, you have the first bevel that I put in that goes to the line, and then the second bevel closer to the bottom, and the two bevels, which are 30 degrees apart, meet about halfway between the line and the bottom of the board. And if you look down the length of the board, where the second bevel meets the bottom of the board at this corner, that corner runs in a nice smooth curve that follows the perimeter of the board all the way until we get 17 inches from the tail. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is the top part of the rail. I'm going to flip the board over, and I'm going to use my Surfform to break off the top corner where the vertical edge of the board above the line meets the deck of the board. I'm going to break this corner off and make a nice smooth curve that runs from the deck of the board all the way down to the line that I made on the edge. And now on the top of the board with the Surfform, I can go all the way to the tail and break off the corner all the way to the tail, so I can round the deck of the board all the way down to the hard edge at the bottom of the board. So remember, the corner is going to be where the bottom of the board meets the vertical side. I'm going to round off the entire deck all the way down to the bottom edge. So now I've taken the deck of the board all the way around till it meets the apex line, up and down the length of the board. Okay. Now we're going to take our sanding screen and we're going to pull it on the rail. Nice long strokes from the nose all the way to the tail. And as we get to the tail where it goes hard, we're going to rotate the screen onto the deck of the board so as not to break off that hard corner at the hard edge of the board. We're going to take nice long strokes starting at the tail on the deck. Then when the edge starts to go soft, we roll the screen around the rail and then go all the way out to the nose. And with the screen, I'm going to be careful not to break off the corner where the tucked under edge meets the bottom of the board. I'm going to leave that corner hard. I'm going to leave it, I'm not going to break off the corner. Yeah, I'm going to continue with the screen until there's no hard corners on the rolled part of the rail. I'm going to get all of those marks where two bevels meet at a corner. I'm going to get those all rounded out so that the rail is perfectly smooth up and down its length. The only edge I'm going to leave hard is at the tail, and that line that I made closest to the stringer on the bottom of the board.